Hello, Africa, and today we're coming to you all the way from Delta State, Nigeria. It gives me the honor, in fact, the privilege of introducing to you His Excellency, the Governor of Delta State, Dr. Emmanuel Eweta Uduaghan. Good morning and welcome to the show. Okay, I thought I wouldn't repeat that just in case I make a mistake, but thank you so much for greeting me in this way. But now, first of all, before we even talk about the serious stuff, I have to say, I love what you're wearing. Do you mind telling us a little bit about it?
Thank you. This is a traditional dress, but I'm a Shekiri man. And this is the way the typical Shekiri man dresses. You have the wrapper at the bottom, and of course you have the top. The top is similar across many of the ethnic groups. You have the local Shekiri and the Jos use almost the same top. But the difference sometimes is the sleeve. We typically use the long sleeve. Some others use the short sleeve. And we also have the bead, which may differentiate one ethnic group from the other. The Shekiri one is a long bead. The colors also indicate the kind of person you are. For the Shekiri man, if he's a chief, then this bead will be white. We have a white bead, which is the chieftaincy bead. You can put on any other bead, but typically have white. But for me, who is not a chief, I cannot put on a white bead.
Okay, so you're the governor, but you're not the chief.
No, I'm not the chief.
So you're wearing the orange one.
Yes, I did. Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. You learn something new every day. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Therefore, for chiefs who are not from other chiefs than the local chiefs, they have the round bead, small, tiny bead, round on the neck. People popularly call it farm bells.
Okay. Interesting, very interesting culture, I must say.
Of course, you have the hats.
Yes, I was about to ask, because the hat reminds me of the president of Nigeria. So is that a common culture everywhere in Nigeria?
No, people call it now the South cap. It's the kind of hat that is very common in the South. There are other types of hats that people from Nigeria put on, but this is a common one.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Okay, Africa, now that we've gone into the entire outfit, what do you call it, attire, right?
Yes, attire.
Yes. Now that we know a little bit more about the attire, I think it's time we get onto the serious stuff, shall we? Well, some of the 3 points on His Excellency agenda for the state, Delta State, is that he wants to look at security and peace, or rather peace and security. He wants to achieve that, and he also wants to achieve human capital development as well as infrastructure development. So for now, we'll talk a little bit more about peace and security, and we'll dive a little into human capital development. But now I have to say one thing. I've been in Delta State for almost a week now, and almost everywhere I've been to, in fact I've been to most parts of Delta State, is that I see a lot of infrastructure going on. I see a lot of new buildings, new developments. I see that people are happy despite everything that we hear about security, about crime. People seem to be happy. And now, speaking of security and crime, what are your main goals in terms of peace and security?
Well, the issue of peace and security dates back to when I became governor. I was already in government, Louis Position, before I became a governor. And that was the time we had the peak of the Niger Delta crisis. Niger Delta crisis in which a lot of youths were fighting themselves just on an ethnic basis, and between the various communities and the federal companies. And of course, also have issues against the government of Nigeria, in the sense that they felt marginalized, they felt forgotten, and they thought taking up arms would draw attention to that area. Fortunately, we had a president, President Emmanuel Eweta Uduaghan, who looked at it and started the amnesty program. So when I came in as governor, he had Niger Delta crisis. I would say it was about the peak of the Niger Delta crisis. And because of that, a lot of people have moved out of the Niger Delta. A lot of people have moved out of Delta State. issue of peace and security became our topmost agenda. Because we needed to ensure that there was peace in the Delta, that there was security, so that the oil companies and other companies can operate in a very peaceful atmosphere, and at the same time, other investors can also come in. So our goal really was to ensure that we have a peaceful environment, safety of lives and properties, whether for companies or even for people, the ordinary person living in that area, farmers, or anything. We had to ensure that we had a very peaceful environment for everybody. And so we started a program that will ensure that there's peace and security. But let me say this. If you look at the 3-point agenda, they are interwoven. Now, without peace and security, you cannot stand alone with infrastructure. Of course, without peace and security, you cannot also ensure that there will be human capital. And without infrastructure, the people will be demoralized, and we have insecurity. So the three of them are interwoven. You require peace and security to ensure that you have infrastructure, you have good infrastructure to ensure that you have human capital be developed. You require infrastructure to ensure that you have peace and security. Because with infrastructure, you attract investors. And with investors, you have employment. And once people are employed, if they have something to do, it is difficult to have that large pool to recruit young ones for criminal activities. So that's why we tied the 3-point agenda together. You require one to achieve action.
But now, coming back to peace and security, ever since you came into power, ever since you became governor of Delta State, what would you say that has done to improve peace and security in this state? Because, as I mentioned before, people do look happy, people do seem as though things are fine, there is peace, there is security. But at the same time, as you drive around Delta State, you still see your policemen, maybe a few soldiers here and there, walking around with guns and so forth. Do you see a Delta State where you won't be able to see policemen walking around holding their guns and people can just feel more safe, more at ease, where foreigners come into the state and they don't have to walk around with a bodyguard?
Yes, that's what we're working towards. But let me just say this, that in terms of security, insecurity is worldwide. Like I told some ambassadors the other day, when you go outside Nigeria and you come down in most international airports, what you get is security agencies at the airports. So this security is worldwide. Now, back to Delta State specifically, there are 3 things that are involved what we did in terms of security. We took the issue of intelligence gathering, which is the most critical part of security. Because without intelligence gathering, you can never succeed in terms of dealing with security issues. Then 2, we also took the issue of the security outfits, the soldiers, the police, and thirdly, the infrastructure of security, the equipment that the security agencies use. Now, how did we go about our intelligence gathering? What we did was to get some of these young boys who had been part of the crisis. These are boys who had carried guns before, who had been part of the fight, and they had made sure that they were able to change them by dealing with some of the issues that they tried to do. We got this from the experience in Belfast, in Northern Ireland. I took some of them to Northern Ireland to study how they achieved their peace. And we discovered that in Northern Ireland, some of the people who were involved in the peace process were people who have been part of the fight. Okay, so we put them together. After coming back, I put some of them together. What we call the Delta Water team. And what were they to do, or what are they doing? They are just to gather and take them. Because they have been part of the fight before, they know how things are planned. They know where the meetings are held, they know how the plans are made, and they also have some contact with some of these boys who are involved in these processes. So they're able to get some of these, because when the plans are being made, they're able to gather enough intelligence that will preempt some of these activities that will take place. But sometimes the activities still take place because you cannot get enough information from it. So that's for the intelligence gathering. The other thing is the area of the infrastructure, that's the equipment. The security agencies require a lot of equipment. And unfortunately, most of the states do more in equipping security outfits, especially the police. Because what the federal government does is not even near enough in terms of what the police require. So for us in Delta, we've been able to buy a lot of equipment, communication equipment, vehicles, we have the pickups, even the APC that they use, we're able to buy from the police. But the purchase of the equipment is a continuous process because it's never enough. We continue to equip them as much as possible. What we do not buy for the police is the guns and the bullets. We don't buy that. But for the other things that require safety gadgets, we buy for them. And then we also are able to make some payments in terms of allowances for the security outfits, both the joint task force and of course the police. So we've done that, and we'll continue to do that as a state so that we can achieve the required peace. But like I said, and I want to emphasize, that attainment of peace requires adequate infrastructure and a happy people. And they can only be happy if they are employed, if they have something to eat, if they have something to drink, if they have an appropriate environment, good water, good roads, light, good education, good health facility. That is the only way you can really achieve this. So while emphasizing, while assisting in terms of the outreach of security agencies, we are laying more emphasis on ensuring that people are happy, that providing them what's required to make them be happy.
Now that brings me to my next question. When we talk about human capital development, I see that there's quite a lot of problem for the youth in terms of study grants, in terms of projects where they can start their own business. And one thing that concerns me about the youth worldwide is that there is unemployment everywhere. And because of that, youth tend to go into crime, into bad acts. And I have to say, what Delta State is doing for the youth is beautiful. It's fantastic. You are actually empowering the youth. Now, do you want to tell us more about that?
Yes. So, when you talk about youth, the youth were once children. And to get the right kind of youth in society, you must start from when they were children. And the child was once an unborn person. So you must also start from before them if you want to get the adequate youth in society. And that is why in our program for human capital development, we started from the human being before birth till you enter the grave. I'll just run through it and I'll come to the youth aspect of it. I will run the youth aspect of it. Now, what do we do? We ensure that the unborn child, the woman who gets pregnant on the day of pregnancy, has adequate medical care on the day of delivery. Now, before now, a lot of our pregnant women had no access to health care. So they fertilized quacks and all that. And because I'm a medical doctor, I have a lot of experience about women who were pregnant, and because they didn't have adequate health care, they had issues. Let me just, a particular one that I experienced as medical assistant that became to government. I was in the hospital, company hospital where a woman was brought, and in between her legs was a baby that was dangling. Every part of the baby was dangling, apart from the head that was trapped in the woman's womb. What had happened? She was pregnant, she was about to deliver. She didn't register in the hospital. She went to the government hospital, she didn't register, she couldn't pay. So she now went to the quack. And the quack, unfortunately, the baby came first with the buttocks. So the quack grabbed the buttocks, pulled the baby. Every other part was going to come out apart from the head. So, and he stretched the neck so much so that the baby died and the neck became as thin as this. That was my experience as a practicing doctor, and that was the experience I used the entry government. So as soon as I became a government, one of the first things is to ensure that we don't have a repeat of that. That is, no woman or no baby should suffer because they could not pay for medical treatment. So we started free maternal health care for every pregnant woman from the day of conception to the day they are born. Even when you have cases of infertility, we also still manage such cases to extent. Then from the day they are born as a baby to 5 years, we also instead free health care for every child between 0 and 5 years. So with that, we have a lot of children that are born now getting better medical care, and of course they will grow up as youths, as better youths, because if you do not have a good medical care, no matter what happens later, you might become a youth as a prone to criminal activities. Now after the 5 years, we have now entered the school age. We are now ensuring that every child has access to school without money being hindrance. We used to have children who belong to school but did not pay one levy, one fees, and all that. So from this primary school age to the secondary school age, it's virtually free in Delta for every child. Apart from being able to pay for us paying for their exam fees and their levies, we also try to develop the infrastructure. Now, when you leave school, of course, after secondary school, you enter university. We're also supporting the university, and then after university, or postgraduate, you make a first class. We pay for your postgraduate education anywhere in the world for every first class indigenous of Delta State. Now, after school, what happens? You have the issue of employment, and this is where the challenge is. Not just in Delta, but even in Nigeria and even across the world. Because I was visiting Obama the other day, his greatest challenge now is to deal with the issue of unemployment. And we have that kind of challenge also in Delta. And this is where we have our infrastructure challenges. Because the government alone cannot employ everybody. We need investors to come in, we need companies to come in so that they can employ a lot of our youth. Now, there are some issues on investment. The investor will require an adequate infrastructure. And the infrastructure we're talking about is the issue of power, the issue of transportation, the airport, the roads, railway, seaports, and of course the ICT infrastructure. We have urbanization, having beautiful towns and cities. They are all issues that require for the average investor to come in. And if the investors come in, then they can employ our youths. Apart from the big investors, we also have local investors. A youth who wants to set up a barbing salon, for instance, will require constant power supply. If not, you have to buy a generator, and it's expensive to maintain the generator. Averagely, if you don't have adequate power infrastructure, whether you're a big company or a small one, you might spend up to 45 to 50% of your running costs on power alone. And that has become a big challenge to investment, whether at the big level or at the small level. So we are placing emphasis on trying to develop this infrastructure, on trying to develop our power. That's why we've gone for the independent power plants that we're constructing, and then assisting the federal government to also build power plants across the state, and also the other transmission lines and transformers that we are purchasing massively to be able to help people. But of course, in the area of transportation, we're placing emphasis on roads infrastructure. We have the major highways, we have roads to the various communities and communities, and we're also placing emphasis on ports, airports in particular. We have the Asaba Airport, which is under construction. We have the Subi Airport expansion program, which we soon also take up. Of course, we have the seaports. These are actually federal government concerns, but as a state, we can't leave them alone because we require them. So we are working with the federal government and trying to expand or trying to use the seaports, especially the water ports. Before now, by the time I came in 2007, the water port was not even taking any ship at all because of the crisis of Niger Delta. But we were able to deal with this, and it's now the second busiest port in Nigeria today. So we have all those infrastructure that will ensure that investors come and are used to be employed, either self-employment or employment industries.
Very good. Now, Your Excellency, this is all the time that we have for today. But I'm going to ask that Africa remains tuned to Good Morning Africa, as the second part of this interview will still be showcased, and that will be done by our very own presenter right here in Nigeria, Anu Michael. But for now, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you, getting to know a little bit more about the goals that you have for Delta State. And I can see that most of these goals go in line with the Millennium Development Goals. And like they say in Nigeria, I recommend you for a job well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So there you go, Africa. This has been His Excellency, the Governor of Delta State, Nigeria, Dr. Emmanuel Eweta Uduaghan. So from myself, Sheila Pirijokonko, is goodbye for now. Ciao, ciao.